Hallo meine Freunde, ich grüße euch wieder recht herzlich. Hier ist ja der Carlson und ja, es findet gerade wieder so eine Schachmeisterschaft statt. Irgendwas so, Moment. Wie heißt das Dingen? Ich muss mal eben einmal kurz gucken. Das ist Airthings Masters. Also wie gesagt, ich blick da auch nicht so richtig durch, was das alles ist. Und ja, es ist auf jeden Fall. Ich habe gestern halt mal reingeschaut. Und Moment, ich mache mal einmal das Bild groß. Einen Moment. So, ich habe da gestern mal reingeschaut. Wie gesagt, da hat Magnus Carlson gegen Inder gespielt, halt in diesem Turnier und ja, Klatsche gekriegt. War ganz interessant und jetzt bin ich halt hier gerade eingestiegen und ja. Der Magnus Carlsen sieht relativ fertig aus, als wenn er die ganze Nacht durchgezescht hätte oder so. Keine Ahnung. Sieht aus, als wenn er gerade aus dem Bett gefallen wäre. Und ziemlich lustlos, aber okay, was soll's. Und ich dachte mir, ja, komm, okay, wie gesagt, also ich werde jetzt nicht jede Partie jetzt hier reinstellen oder so. Wie gesagt, halt immer so just for fun, wie ich halt gerade Bock habe. Und aber es scheint auf jeden Fall eine lustige Partie zu sein. Wir sind auch mittendrin. Aber was heißt mittendrin? Also die Partie hat gerade auch erst angefangen. Und ja, ich lasse das einfach mal für euch laufen. Und wir schauen einfach mal so, was da so passiert. Ist auf jeden Fall immer interessant. Letztes Jahr, wo es um die Weltmeisterschaft ging, wo Magnus, da habe ich ja auch ein paar Spiele reingestellt und halt mit aufgezeichnet. Fand ich auch sehr geil. Wie gesagt, vor allen Dingen auch das lange über 7-Stunden-Spiel, was Magnus gespielt hat. Gegen Ian Schlag mich tot. Ich kann den Namen nicht aussprechen. Und war richtig geil. Und ja, dann ging es mir so dreckig wegen Corona und dann habe ich auch nichts mehr gemacht. Ein paar Wochen. Aber da ich halt selber sehr gerne Schach spiele, ist das schon ganz nett, das mal zu verfolgen. Ja, wie gesagt, ich kriege das halt auch nicht immer mit. Dann nur zufällig halt. Und wie gesagt, Airthings Masters, Champion Chess Tour, dachte ich mal, hau ich mal eben raus. Wie gesagt, ich bin eigentlich absoluter Magnus Carlsen-Fan. Ja, wenn ihr halt euch für Schach interessiert und so jetzt noch nichts davon mitgekriegt habt, müsst ihr mal gucken. Vor allen Dingen das Beste ist sowieso, so habe ich halt das auch angefangen, habe ich halt geguckt, Magnus Carlsen gegen Kasparov. Ja, damals, wo Magnus Carlsen erst 12 oder 13 war, keine Ahnung. Und da halt ein Remis rausgeholt hat oder ein Unentschieden. Das war schon echt Weltklasse. Das war schon richtig geil. Und das, was ich letztes Jahr mitbekommen habe, wo er dann halt auch den Weltmeistertitel halt bekommen hat wieder, waren auch richtig tolle Spiele bei, soweit ich das noch verfolgen konnte. Und ja, das macht schon richtig Bock. So, wenn man da auf Schach Bock hat, dann ist das schon geil. So, den Großen mal zuzugucken. Jetzt den Rechten kenne ich jetzt halt nicht. Den habe ich jetzt halt so noch nicht gesehen. Ich weiß auch nicht, wie viele Punkte der hat oder in der Rangliste, wie viele Elo-Punkte. Wenn sie das vielleicht gleich mal einblenden oder was, keine Ahnung. Magnus Carlsen steht ja, glaube ich, bei 2,8 oder so. Meine ich, 2800 und ein paar kaputte, schlag mich tot. Muss ich selber nochmal nachschauen. Aber das ist ganz lustig, wenn man das sich mal anguckt und ein bisschen mitverfolgt. Es geht ja so oder so halt um mehrere Runden. Ich denke mal, dass das so ein, ja klar, so ein K.O.-System ist halt, wo alle gegeneinander spielen und dann dementsprechend halt nach und nach ausscheiden. Von daher. Aber gestern hat er halt gegen Inder verloren, der da mitspielt. War auch ein sehr interessantes Spiel und deswegen dachte ich jetzt gerade, ach komm, machst du mal an, so, ne? Ja, lässt du mal laufen. Ich mach mal wieder die andere Größe an. weil dann kann ich nämlich hier den Chat mit anmachen. Wenn ich das finde jetzt. Weil hier ist nämlich eigentlich noch ein Chat mit bei. Der Titel.
I don't need to engage in all these complications. Let's just trade off the pieces, make it simple.
Yeah.
And, there are some endings where even Magnus Carlson has no chance of winning or even saving the game.
Ich muss mal eben kurz was schauen, Freunde. Magnus Carlsen ist live. Ich glaube, ich muss hier drauf gehen. Oder Play Magnus. Einen Moment, ich gehe mal hier drauf. Ah, schon besser. Weil hier ist nämlich auch der Chat mit bei.
Definitely the key. And meanwhile, finally, has been kind of a release of the tension. We just on the last couple of moves saw a trade, and now both sides have a knight on one of those 4 central squares in the middle of the board.
Yeah.
I prefer white's knight because the black knight can actually at some point get hit by one of white's pawns.
So, da kann ich nämlich eben noch mal einen raushauen hier. Einfach mal grüßen.
Throw a pawn up the board and destabilize the black
Da
knight.
ist das schon ganz lustig so.
For example, with this one, kicking the black knight away. However, the same cannot be said for black. Black can never kick away this knight.
Jetzt mache ich den wieder ein bisschen leiser hier.
Lines next to this knight, there's just no pawn to push. So we would
Ich höre mir das dann gleich an, bevor ich es hochlade.
challenge it.
Weil da gibt es halt reichlich Spielraum halt, ne? Wie gesagt, wie ihr meine eigene Stimme hört, wie ihr jetzt halt den Dings hier hört.
One of the central 4 squares here.
Den, ja, was ist das?
It's got COVID, it's isolated.
Ja, wie nennt man die? Keine Ahnung, komme ich gerade nicht drauf. Reporter? Nein, ist kein Reporter, ist halt,
Social distancing.
ja,
I have to say, this is just
ja, ist weg.
I'm learning from this game just about taking center. This is exactly where I would put my pieces. Just throw them towards the center.
Yeah, and again, that's why we play through old games.
Yeah.
Pattern recognition, you learn what to aim for, and I'm sure, yeah, even players who are still learning or kind of starting out the game, they could reach a position like this one just on general principles. If you know that
Der Carlson sieht aus, ey, so, oh,
the players are definitely going to
Scheiße.
players have both done everything right, and it's still very tense.
And whilst the tense situation occurs over the board, I want to relieve the atmosphere here, and I want to show you some selfies. And
Airthings Masters, Round 10 ist das, muss ich mir merken, damit ich weiß, wie ich das Dings jetzt nenne. Magnus Carlsen gegen Hansen. Hansen, okay.
Then we have another selfie from Nard ONG Putik, who says, rooting for Prague to win. And just listening to, oh, that's very nice. Ivanka's lovely accent, watching from Saudi Arabia. Thank you very much, Nard, for that compliment. And Asger says, is watching from Minneapolis and Minnesota. And I must say the Puma jacket, though, is cool on David. Everyone I have seen a lot of compliments on the Puma jacket, and some people saying they want some as well.
Yeah.
Feels weird sitting without the tie though, without the suit. I mean,
Yeah, like more than 100 show you've been in here with your suit, and then suddenly in like a sports jacket.
yeah, I'm a new man. New man.
Aber ich musste auf dem anderen auch den Kanal ankriegen, den Chat. Ich versuch's nochmal, vor allen Dingen der läuft besser hier. So, der läuft besser hier.
Definitely the key. And meanwhile,
Aber hier muss doch auch ein Dings bei sein, das gibt's da gar nicht.
we just on the last couple of moves saw a trade.
Mal so.
Both sides have a knight on one of those 4 central squares in the middle of the board.
Yeah.
Ja gut, das sind die Kommentare, aber das ist ja kein Chat.
Black knight can actually at some point get hit by one of white's pawns.
And I was like, it was like I felt really bad. And I think I've been spoilt by the Norwegian mountains a little bit.
Yeah,
Then I got used
Everything
to it.
is relative.
Well, is there a list of the worst cities in the world when it comes to air quality? Not to speak badly of anyone, but
There is a list with the cities that have a lot of pollution, for sure. But I tend to focus on the cities who actually have good air quality instead.
So what would be a good, if you want to go to a big city for a weekend and have some good time, but you don't want to go to a place with bad air quality?
Oslo.
Really? Oslo is one of the best air quality cities.
Well, if you go a little bit north and discover the beautiful Marka
Yeah.
and everything that has to do with that. But in general, obviously, cities in general have a lot of combustion from cars, emissions. So in general, if you want to experience really.
Aber hier muss auch ein Chat bei sein, ne? Oder nicht? Aber hier ist das nicht bei.
Yeah, and just a question as well, because a moment ago we saw Magnus Carlson's air quality stats come up, and we've talked about CO2 levels, we've talked about a few things, but
Nee.
perfect temperature for a home office or perfect humidity? Because the 2 red circles I saw in Magnus Carlson's air quality, they were temperature and humidity. Did those
yeah, look
affect?
at that.
Did those affect
Ja, aber der läuft halt besser als der andere, deswegen lasse ich den jetzt mal an.
Well, we do have this. We have general guidelines that says 22 degrees is the optimum.
Ja, ich lasse den jetzt mal so an, wie gesagt.
Typical indoor clothes. But there's always going to be 20% of the people, depending on the gender, depending on airflow, depending on different factors, that's going to say that 22 degrees is not the optimum air temperature in there. That has
Jo.
to do with the thermal comfort, which has some divergence from people to people, but generally 22 degrees is an optimum.
You could potentially solve this big dilemma that we have in the chess world when it comes to chess tournaments. In chess tournaments, normally the air runs quite cold.
Yep.
And you see the men are very comfortable, but the women are freezing.
Yeah.
So what is the ideal temperature for a woman and a man?
22 degrees.
So still 22
Yeah,
degrees.
22 degrees. In the end, it doesn't matter. If you find an optimum, if you do scientific studies, 20% of the people, if it's 10 people are not going to be satisfied anyway,
Yeah.
Okay.
regardless.
Yeah.
So 22 degrees.
Oh.
Okay, well, there's a lesson also to tournament organizers all over the place.
Yeah.
22 degrees.
Yeah, finally solved that age-long debate. Age-old debate.
I can definitely envision that in these huge halls, with the women with like wool scarves and just freezing, and the men are like, "Whew, it's so warm."
I
Do
played
you
in
feel
a
guilty
tournament.
complaining?
I played in a tournament once where every single woman had their coat on.
Auf jeden Fall auch ein cooles Spiel, so.
And
Echt.
some of the men who were quite big actually, they were like there in t-shirts, and we were like, not bad.
But then it's super important to monitor the air, so you actually know that well,
Yeah.
it is 22 degrees.
Yeah. Yeah. So then
So that old lady in the corner wearing the big jacket and all, you can show the data at least.
Yeah. True.
That has some psychological.
No, that's true. Oh, okay. So it is 22 degrees. Okay, maybe it is not that cold. And then, yeah. All right. What's happening on the board, David? I do hear some pings.
Yeah. Meanwhile, it's all about maneuvering right now because actually nothing's changed in the center of the board. Both players just kind of tiptoeing around. It's very, very reminiscent as well of the last game where Eric played against Anish Giri. It feels like the tension is still bubbling, but it's all about whether he has enough time left on the clock for when the action actually starts. And the same move that Anish employed against Eric earlier in the last round has now been used by Eric himself. He's maybe learnt from what Giri did against him, and he's just pushed his B pawn forward 1 square. He's trying to distract Magnus on this left side of the board. He's trying to open up lines. If you look at the black queen, look at the black rook behind it, they're trying to open up lines for themselves. But Magnus, he's not touching that side of the board. He's playing now in the center where his pieces are, where they are stronger, and that's great strategy. If you're stronger on one side of the board, play there. Ignore your opponent's plans. It does tend to become a race, but if you touch pawns on the side you're weaker, bad things will happen. And okay, meanwhile, Black's knight was attacked in the center. It has now retreated, and Eric has 6 minutes this time. Things are heating up. We see maybe there will be pawn pushes in the center. Things will explode open, and 6 minutes is much better than his previous game when, he really, really went wrong quite quickly. So I like what Eric is doing, despite what the computer evaluation says. I do prefer White's position, but I think Black is at least trying to create some counterplay on this left side of the board. And if he can break through there.
Vor allem, das sind jetzt halt Spielerunden, die halt nicht so lange sind. Ich glaube insgesamt 15 Minuten. Plus dann nochmal irgendwie zwei oder dreimal Verlängerung jeweils von 1,5 Minuten, keine Ahnung. Und ist halt jetzt nicht so extrem halt dieses, was ich ja, letztes Jahr die Meisterschaft, die Weltmeisterschaft, das waren natürlich ganz andere Spiele, die Klassikspiele halt. Von der Zeit her, das war schon heftig, aber das war schon ein richtiger Krimi. Hier geht es jetzt halt ein bisschen schneller zur Sache, obwohl ich das Tempo eigentlich gut finde. als dieses ganz schnelle Schach. Also das ist nicht so ganz meine Welt.
Kind of chess strategy 101, and despite
Wow.
allowing a pawn trade here, despite allowing this open line, the queen and rook, they're just hitting thin air. It's all about these pieces. And,
Boah, die Weißen, die stehen aber auch alle zusammen, ey, meine Güte, ey.
if it happens on the left side of the board, they're ready. If it happens towards the king side, they're ready. And that's why centralized pieces are the best. They're just so flexible. And meanwhile, black is trying to create something. He is hitting a pawn now, Eric. And I think there's just nothing else to do. Black is set up in a defensive formation over here, as you mentioned, Kaya. And he's just hoping that no matter what White's pieces do, he will have time to go and grab this pawn. And if he grabs this
Ob
pawn,
er jetzt den Turm rübersetzt
really dangerous. Just
unter die schwarze Dame.
So,
It's not so easy to defend that pawn either, because the move that you would really love to play is actually just to pick up the knight that's sitting on the d2 square and move it to the c4 square. But the problem is that knight is a key defender of one of White's really important central pawns. So
after a queen trade, yeah, you mentioned it, Jovanka, this pawn no longer defended sufficiently. It's attacked twice, it's only defended once. So black can grab it very safely, and black actually would be just a pawn up with a winning advantage. So the move Magnus wants to play, as you mentioned, not possible at the moment.
And there's also another idea on the board, which is basically that if White goes, okay, fine, I want to defend that pawn, and maybe I'm going to play the rather passive rook move all the way. Yeah, that looks good. Looks like everything is holding tight. But take a look at that knight. White's pride and joy sitting in the middle of the board is only defended once. And black is attacking it once. So therefore, the old Soviet language was that this is a tactical weakness. And this means that knight takes pawn is impossible.
Yeah, and now look at this bishop. It's overworked. It wants to be defending its own knight, but it's just been deflected away to capture black's knight now. Black's knight just too strong. It's grabbed the pawn, attacking the white queen. So
Aber ich sehe so die Spieler nicht eingeblendet mehr.
no longer defends.
Das verstehe ich jetzt gerade nicht. Ich mache mal wieder hier raus.
That's actually a second threat.
Da auch
Black
nicht.
could be a pawn up here with a nasty check. The white king actually a bit vulnerable on this diagonal. So black has two threats in the current position. Queen takes pawn, but also the very sneaky, the hidden threat of knight takes pawn, deflecting away this overworked bishop. So how does Magnus deal with both of these? The one move that I see, I mean, it's not a move Magnus wants to play, but the only way I see to deal with both of those is to...
Sorry, Freunde, wenn ich hier ein bisschen rumseppe, aber ich bin halt auch am Ausprobieren. Ne? Und ich setze ihn jetzt hier wieder rüber. Mich. So. Weil ich das da rechts besser finde. Und aber wenn ich jetzt Vollbild mache, dann passt das ja nicht. Dann muss ich doch hier drin bleiben, in der Ecke. So.
Oh, that is the best move. That was the only move to kind of actually maintain a small advantage.
Magnus has blundered. He's just forgotten about this threat. He's brought his rook across, attacking the black queen. But now knight takes pawn, I think, is just winning.
Stockfish.
Or at least gives a big advantage. And look at that. Stockfish, the computer confirms it. This move, knight takes pawn, knight takes f4, gives black a +1 advantage.
Whoa.
Just wins a pawn.
We've got to check out the player
Yeah,
cams. We
let's get
have
up
to
the
see
players. Well, look at that. Eric Hansen is now leaning forwards. It definitely seems he is noticing that this is a critical moment. Is Magnus Carlson realizing
Stockfish ist ja ein Computerprogramm. Irgendwas ist jetzt... Ich sehe es gerade nicht so schnell. Aber ich habe ja gesagt, er setzt den da drunter. Hätte ich ja auch gemacht.
These top players have great instincts. His spidey senses will be tingling. He will know there's something in the position, but it's just about whether he has enough time to calculate it. And sometimes, especially when you play someone like the world champion, you trust them. You trust their calculation. You get a bit scared. You think, these top players don't make mistakes. And then you just miss your opportunities. So it's psychological here. First, it's about seeing the move, seeing it's an option, but also trusting himself.
Stockfish ist halt ein Computerprogramm. So viel habe ich auch schon verstanden.
Rook attacks queen, queen moves. That could be like an assumption there in his thinking. And remember, one of the pawns is still up for grabs. He could actually go queen takes pawn and be calculating and getting excited about that line. Completely missing that knight takes pawn on the agenda.
Even stronger. Yeah, and actually, if we look at the other moves that the computer suggests here, the top three choices by black, two moves are fine. Knight takes pawn is actually very strong, and I think actually that gives a better advantage than the computer is saying, especially psychologically. The second move, okay, he finds the best move. I was going to say he could take a pawn with his queen, and that's fine as well, but Magnus now reacts instantly. It feels like Magnus is bluffing, because look at this last move by the black queen. She's now attacking the bishop next to her, and she's still keeping an eye on both of the two white knights.
Wow.
And white's dark squared bishop in the center.
Wow.
Defending both of the knights. It's simply over.
Krass.
Black is up a pawn for free. And Eric, big advantage. He's still got time on the clock as well. Doing well.
Geil.
Look at the bar now. It is really reacting.
Richtig geil. Richtig geil, ey.
The chess streamer Eric
Ja, so ab und zu muss ich auch mal, wie gesagt, da was machen. Also ich bin richtiger Schachfan geworden. Also
in trouble again.
Magnus, I mean, you can count on one hand the amount of times he loses with white in a year. But yesterday he lost against Pragnananda with white. He lost against Nepomny actually with white on the first day. Dangerous times now for the world champion.
And he does not seem happy.
Yeah, and full credit to Eric for spotting that as well and going for it. And it's just converting this though. Still a long way to go. Still, most of the pieces still on the board. Yeah, I think I would just be a bit scared here. I would just retreat that black knight that had entered white's position, that did grab a pawn. I would just step it back. I'm not sure exactly where, but a few safe squares there. And black should have the advantage. He does retreat with that knight.
Yeah, I agree.
er geht mit dem Pferd zurück.
And especially when you don't have so much time left on the clock. And I'm sure that Eric has just had an adrenaline rush when he's played that knight takes pawn, because, you know, before he didn't perhaps contemplate the idea that he could win against Magnus, and now it's on the cards. And this is where players start to get nervous.
Both sides keeping a poker face, neither side giving much away. If I were Magnus, if I just lost a pawn for free, I would be beating myself up. I would just be shaking my head.
I was going to ask, do they see each other?
That's a very good question. They can if they want to. They can have a choice. But I don't think Magnus has his camera open most of the time. Has the opponent's camera open most of the time.
But is this a thing in chess where you like analyze the opponent and draw conclusions based on eye movements and things like that?
Definitely. I mean,
David does it all the time, right?
Yeah, I'm obsessed with staring. I stare at the opponent too much. I think most of my opponents get really uncomfortable. They're like, why is he looking at me? But definitely when you play over the board, it's impossible to ignore what's happening. Wow, what has just happened there? Magnus plays bishop takes pawn.
Whoa.
He's completely hallucinated. Magnus just lost a piece for free. And has he given up?
He has given up.
Wow.
He has resigned.
That you will never see that from a world champion. Magnus just took a pawn, but now black will play bishop takes bishop, and black will be a piece up for free.
Erik Hansen hat aufgehört.
What is up with the world champion? This is a huge development. Erik Hansen, the second lowest ranked player in the tournament. The chess streamer has just beaten with the black pieces the world champion. And Magnus is still sitting looking at this. What is he thinking, David?
I don't know. He must be really surprised and shocked.
Hat aufgegeben?
It feels like he hallucinated something.
Yeah, sometimes we talk about chess blindness. Sometimes you just make assumptions, you just forget about something. For example, maybe here he just forgot his bishop could be captured by the black light squared bishop, and he's just a piece down. Something just went wrong in his calculations there. Maybe that was on his mind, but he just played it in the wrong order. That can happen too. Sometimes that's the second move in your mind. But if you play it first, it can all go wrong. And here we see Magnus. Is this after the game? Is this just...
This is live.
This is live. Okay. Yeah, just confused. As Jovanka said, it's that one hallucination. Just seeing ghosts, seeing something that isn't there, and unfortunately blundering a piece for free.
Usually we would see an angry reaction from Magnus after a blunder like that. Is this just him not in his best form?
Yeah, maybe still suffering the after effects of COVID. I know, people talk about the COVID fog when it's just hard to get your brain working sometimes, and especially when he made a mistake in the previous move. They say that mistakes come in pairs, blunders come in pairs, and one bad move led to another, and led to a loss as well.
And Erik Hansen, he just got up and left as soon as he could.
We saw him raise his hands in jubilation. He did completely unexpected, because I think he was preparing himself mentally for that fight, and then Magnus just gave him a gift.
Wow.
And he didn't expect it, and huge jubilation.
What does this mean for Erik Hansen, David?
I mean, he's going to be celebrating off camera for sure, and if we get a chance to interview him later, I would love to.
Naja, ich meine, er ist nicht umsonst der Weltmeister, ne? Davon mal ab.
To reset, he still needs to
Wie gesagt.
In order to qualify for those knockouts.
Yeah, Magnus Carlson still sitting there. This is strange. We rarely see him sit by the computer for that long after a game. He is still looking over this, and we have to do the same, David. What on earth happened here?
Yeah. Was it a blunder? Was it a moment of madness? Was it a mouse slip? Sometimes you can blame this guy on making bad moves, but let's just show the first blunder by Magnus, the first mistake. Here, as we mentioned, this pawn under attack and this knight takes pawn was a threat. So Magnus needed to retreat his knight, but this was a difficult move to find. Instead, he brought his rook across one square, and now Eric did pounce. Knight takes pawn. There's not enough time to...
Ist er ja wieder zurückgegangen, genau.
Queen would fall with check. This is the key. And after the knight is captured, black would actually win the white rook at the very end. So white would now be down on material significantly. Instead, Magnus had to retreat his queen, which is under fire. And once this happened, black stepped back.
Dann ist er zurückgegangen.
That's under attack from the black queen now. But after the knight retreated, this was the moment. This is where Magnus hallucinated, made a fatal mistake. If he plays bishop takes bishop, just a fair trade. Yes, he's a pawn down, but he has chances to save the game. The game would go on for a long, long time. But instead, we saw Magnus play a bizarre move. He took this pawn and he didn't even wait for Eric to move. He resigned because after bishop takes bishop, black is simply up a piece for free. It's hard to explain. Maybe we need Magnus to explain it later to us, but mouse slip, blunder, whatever it was, Magnus will struggle now to recover from that blunder.
Wow, bad news for the world champion. We're going to jump into another game here in round 10. It's Andrei Yesipenko. Again, 16-year-old Pragna.
Ja genau, der hat gestern halt, der Inder hat halt gestern gegen Carlson gewonnen. War auch richtig cool.
Doing a quick material count, that's the first thing we do anytime we jump into a new position. If we count the pawns,
Aber
is a pawn up. If we count the pieces, it's all level. So black is one pawn up.
ja gut, die sind ja auch schon weit, also da ist ja auch schon fast zu Ende von der Zeit her. Beide ziemlich am Wackeln. Gut, okay, lass ich mal eben noch laufen. Ne?
For black, the second rank, for white, the seventh rank, because that's where all the targets lie. And yeah, I think black's king looks a bit airy, but it's pretty safe for now. And that's why everything is in black's favor. And we see Yesipenko on the retreat. Just actually, this is a nice defensive move, just keeping the white knights protecting each other. Still a long way to go, though, before we can call this one as a win for black, despite the advantage.
All right. It looks like quite a nervy match, judging by everyone's body language. You know, Yesipenko.
Ja, der ist auch noch jung, der Inder. Ich glaube, der ist erst 16. Aber auch schon verdammt gut, ey. Jetzt wird er da ja nicht mitspielen, also.
A very explosive round 10 here. So we do know Magnus Carlson has just lost to Eric Hansen. Anish Giri, 2 wins in a row, winning also his game against Rein. That was a huge battle and a huge win for Anish. Jan Pomniachi on fire, winning another game here against Hans Niemann. We see the bar for Abdusattorov against Liam Lea. It's looking very good for Abdusattorov as well. And let's see what happens here. Can Pragnananda, again with the black pieces, win this game?
Yeah, and that's a very, very nice last move by black. This is a bit of a mysterious one, maybe, to players who are just starting the game. Why bring your king even further towards the center of the board into maybe a square where it's more vulnerable? But black's king here acts as a great defensive piece, just protecting a pawn near it, and often you want your king in touching distance of its knight. So that black knight will act as a perfect defender of its king behind it. So meanwhile, look at this as well. Pragnananda, he's done the hard work. He's one pawn up. And when you're ahead on material, you just want to consolidate, protect everything. And now black's bishop protecting a pawn as well around it. So if you look at everything in black's camp, they're all pretty much defending each other. And just safety first chess, when you are ahead of material, tends to be just the best practical way to handle a position.
Yeah, it's a really, really instructive move. And I'm also expecting the light square bishop that's sitting there on its starting square to get involved in the defense. And this kind of releases the queen from defensive duties, and then she can zoom into the white side of the board.
Exactly. So meanwhile, Yesipenko, he's a fighter. He's won some great games this tournament, including against Magnus, and he brought the white rook all the way over to the left. He wants to swing it up the board onto the 7th rank where black's king lies, while Pragnananda has just gone for Jovanka's move. We've talked about centralization so much today. Look at those black pieces in the middle of the board, the 2 black bishops. Between them, they cover pretty much every square, every important square at least. And yeah, at some point, Yesipenko has to take some risks. He has to go and at least scare Pragnananda with some threats. So I would recommend bringing that white rook up to the 7th rank at some point over the next few turns and targeting the black king. If you sit and wait too long, then black will simply activate the black queen, and that black rook will cause some damage. Yeah, you can't wait. Timing is everything here.
Do you know what these two have in common?
Ja, die Zeit wird immer weniger, genau.
Playing in the Airthings Masters.
And they both beat the world champion in the Airthings Masters.
Wow.
And two young players. Incredible stuff.
Both still teenagers, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, we've seen a trade of dart squared bishops. And now Esipenko at least trying to get the white queen involved. Very, very logical as well. And that's the type of move where even if you're struggling, it can scare the opponent when you put your queen in their half, or at least to threaten some things. That white queen is maybe just at the moment only threatening a pawn, but if you imagine the white rook coming up to the 7th rank and lining itself up again with the black knight with the king behind it, there are some serious threats brewing.
Yeah. And in light of that, I actually was thinking that the king should get involved in the defense, because there's some, still some threats against the white king. Instead, Pragnananda decides to take a very safety.
Falls ihr jetzt irgendwie so komische Geräusche hört, meine Frau macht einen Geburtstagskuchen für unseren Sohn. Der hat morgen Geburtstag, also nicht wundern. Wird ein bisschen laut jetzt vielleicht. Aber was muss, das muss, ne? Mach mal, kein Problem.
Minimal pawn protection, but the black bishop and black knight will be great defenders. And that's the thing. When you go on the attack, you need more attacking pieces than defensive pieces. And it's going to be a struggle for white to invite more attacking pieces than there are defenders.
And there was a big threat in the position.
Yeah, let's get up the board to show this actually, because we've just seen a really cool move by Pragnananda. You mentioned in this position, Ivanka, a threat. Which one? This rook
takes knight, yeah.
Yeah, so this knight, if it's captured by, for example, if white just makes a random move, struggling to find one, but at some point the black rook could take this knight, the knight recaptures, and black's queen could now pounce. And 2 pieces for a rook, we saw before earlier today, 2 pieces are nearly always superior to a rook. Also, there is the trap of queen takes knight. Now queen to the center check would be a double attack, winning the white rook in the corner. And that's why after queen takes pawn, black tried to deflect the white queen away from the protection of this knight. The white queen had to stay defending it on this diagonal, offering a trade. But now look at this, Pragnananda bringing the black queen into the action. This is exactly what he did to Magnus Carlson to win. And actually, if we catch up with the position, this black queen, this is exactly where he put it against Magnus. This is exactly what he did. And now all he needs to do, and he's done it. I was going to say he can introduce his bishop to try and get to the white king, but he does it in a different way. He takes this pawn. And this is just decisive. I think he's winning, because now if knight takes bishop, we will see checkmate on the board. This is a check, hitting the king, and a checkmate. And let's go back to the players, because this game could end any moment now.
Wow, Andrei Esipenko coming from 3 straight wins, and now to face the youngest player in the tournament, Pragnananda. How impressed are you with Prag in this game again, David?
Just nerves of steel.
Yeah.
And it's so accurate as well, and it's so logical. Look at this, the black king just sidestepping, protecting its knight. We mentioned it as well. Knights are a king's best friend.
Oh, die Zeit, ja. Geil, ey. Ist schon spannend, ey.
So hard to break down. Black's king and knight defending everything. The rest of black's pieces allowed loose on the attack. And yeah, look at the computer as well, plus 15. That means, in material terms, that's a queen and a rook advantage. It's even more than a queen and rook advantage. And yeah, the white king in the corner, no defenders. Black's king perfectly defended by himself.
I think we're going to see your idea in operation, David. I think the bishop is just going to take 1 step forward and attack this pawn. Just wants to get on the long diagonal, give a check.
Yeah, if you could just pick up black's bishop and teleport it on the same diagonal as white's king, it's game over.
Even better, you could just net a knight.
Yeah, why not grab a knight for free? Who needs checkmate? You can just grab a knight and be greedy. And Esipenko, look at him on the camera. He's about to give up.
Yeah, it definitely. There it is.
Hat aufgegeben.
Win for 16-year-old Pragnananda again.
Der Inder, der haut sie alle weg, ey. Schatzi, gestern Magnus Carlson, heute jetzt hier einen anderen. 16 Jahre, der Inder. Jo, hat den nächsten weggehauen. Boah, der ist fertig, der andere. Krass. Krass. Krass, krass.
I think it's the way he lost this game, but also losing with white in Russia. It's a badge of pride that you never ever lose with white. You're just solid and you try and pressure and win those games.
Yeah, you did really speak highly of some of these moves by Pragnananda. Where did he get this win?
Yeah, I just want to show the closing moments one more time to explain why he won and how he won. If we jump into the position here, Black's defensive pieces are doing great, but it's all about these attacking pieces. You have two attackers, but remember, attackers need to overwhelm defenders, and Black introduced another piece into the attack. Bishop takes pawn, and this was decisive. This is a double attack, and remember, if the knight captures the bishop, then after queen takes pawn, this king is all alone, and it will be checkmated. So yeah, just introduce more attacking pieces into the game. That is how you win.
Schon geil. Schon richtig geil, Freunde. Richtig cool. Habe ich ja jetzt das richtige Spiel aufgenommen. Also macht Bock. Macht richtig Bock. Oh. In 40 Minuten. Geil. Das kommt gleich noch. Das ist immer cool, dass andere halt, so wie ich halt, sich das angucken. Muss ich vielleicht auch mal machen. So ein Selfie von mir. Wo ist denn mein Handy? Ich weiß noch nicht, ich habe noch nicht gesehen, wo sie das halt hochladen, ey. Moment, müssen wir mal kurz gucken. Ja gut, den brauche ich jetzt nicht auf mein Selfie mit drauf haben. Moment, dann mache ich das gleich, wenn die wieder weg sind. Aber wo tun die denn hochladen? Die Bilder einfach in den Kommentaren?
It's time, you guys and Joachim, for the Play Magnus Challenge. We are now challenging you to play Magnus Carlson at 10 years old, 2 minutes on the clock. The goal is to last as many moves as possible before you lose on the board or on the clock, or maybe even win. What chances do you think you have?
Nee, so ist auch doof. Warte, ich versuch's nochmal so.
Even David lost. We know it's hard, right, David?
Don't remind me.
As long as I get 2-digit amount of moves, then I'm happy.
I believe in you. I believe in you.
Yeah. What sort? Have you practiced at all?
I tried it.
Okay.
Tried it a
Okay.
few times.
Cooles Bild. Ich glaube, das kann ich hochladen.
You know,
Muss ich mal schauen, ob das geht.
The moves out. Only 2 minutes on the clock.
yeah.
All right. Are you ready? Joachim, I wish you the best of luck.
So.
Here we go. Third player in our Play Magnus Challenge. And here we go. Yes. Oh. We're on the flank. What do you think of this opening, David?
I like it. Very quick moves as well by Joachim.
Aber das werde ich jetzt erstmal hier beenden. Wie gesagt, keine Ahnung. Dann gucke ich halt, wenn er jetzt gleich wirklich Carlson nochmal spielt gegen den Chinesen, dann werde ich das wahrscheinlich gleich auch noch aufzeichnen. Dann sage ich jetzt hier erstmal Tschüss, lad das Ding jetzt hoch. Und ja, ich hoffe, es hat euch gefallen hier, was ich hier mache.
72 moves.
Und ja,
We did have
ich mache das, ich finde das klasse und werde das andere Spiel dann halt auch gleich aufzeichnen und auf meinen Kanal hochladen. So, dann sage ich erstmal jetzt hier an dieser Stelle Tschüss und wir sehen uns. Macht's gut, ciao.